90% of the time, the people that you're out, at the conference with or the training with, they've got families too. They're dealing with the same kind of thing. So it's not like you're the lone ranger that is the only person dealing with it. Everyone is dealing with the same type of thing. And so kind of bonding with people over those types of issues and talking to them and getting to know people about, their family, their friends, that's how you build relationships.
Hi, I'm Nick Warner. As a dad, a lucky husband, and as a business coach, I value people and relationships above all else. But next is winning, sustainability, and healthy culture. I've been a business owner for 25 years and served for decades as a special advisor to business and government leaders at all levels. Let's just say I've seen some stuff. My passion and my expertise are helping motivated professionals and businesses find the highest level confluence of what they want in life and business. This is what it feels like to be together at the top. Thank you to our sponsors, Scholl's Brick and Rogaski, Three Bridges Consulting, Kathy Olson at Ships and Trips, and Connect Strategies. Today, we're working from a slightly different format. This episode is called Nick Notes with my guest, Kathy Prizmich Kernan. In this episode, I, Nick the coach, will share more than I normally do by discussing practical business issues and bouncing off and potentially even sparring with Kathy. She's one of the smartest operatives I've worked around. Kathy has a way of working herself to the top and becoming one of my favorite things, indispensable. Kathy Prizmich Kernan is currently a partner at recently formed Mosaic Solutions in Sacramento, California, the capital of California. I asked Kathy to join me today for Nick Notes because of her success across different business lanes and her love affair with winning, but winning the right way. Kathy's been impactful in big government, big corporations, small business, and nonprofits. Kathy can fight you in the boardroom, the trenches, on the policy, in the media, and in any capital, and through the people that universally trust her at high levels. But she'd much rather help you and work with you. Kathy's also an example of something we have explored on this show, moving on to move up. Her career has spanned California State University Northridge, learning bigger ropes at California General Services Agency, an impactful run as special advisor on programs and rehabilitation to the head of the California prison system, a very successful stint in big corporate America, to now running a thriving small business advising nonprofits and organizations that interact with state and local governments in California and nationally. Kathy Prizmich Kernan, where are you today? And say hello to the people of Together at the Top.
Well, hello, people. And hello, Nick. Thanks for having me. I'm super, super blessed to be a part of this. And, I feel like I should say I'm in Sacramento because I am in Sacramento. I'm in Sacramento today. I was in San Bernardino yesterday and happy to say I'm here in Sac.
Yeah, happy for you. You're in Sac. We're going to talk about business travel too, because I know that's been a big part of your game and
big part.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad. So I'm glad you mentioned it out of the gate. You were surprised when I asked you, Kathy, to be on the show, but you're exactly the type of person we want. You're a doer. There's so many great business podcasts, but where I differentiate and where we differentiate it Together at the Top is in the same place I differentiate as a coach, which is in the practical application. So that's what this conversation's about and why it's going to be so fun. I don't know if you're going to interview me or I'm going to interview you, but I'll at least start out and we can go from there. Maybe I get one question, you get one question. As I love what I do, we'll learn from each other. I really enjoy the learn from each other part. You ready?
I am ready. And I'll say that the reason I was a little surprised is because I'm more behind the scenes kind of person. That's why I'm surprised.
Yep. And that's also why you're on, because you have made yourself indispensable and had big impact behind the scenes. And it really catches my attention. So I'm going to start. What's the secret sauce, Kathy? For me, it's curiosity, motivation, and actual talent. I've not seen a substitute, especially for motivation and desire. Tell me about the secret sauce that you have to succeed, and what's your secret sauce?
I think the secret sauce is a little different for everyone, but there's a few things that kind of stand out, right? You need to have self-awareness. Self-awareness is a big thing. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are. Also, asking a lot of questions, being more inquisitive, then listen more than you talk. I think that's a big thing. Another part of it is follow up and follow through, especially in the business that we have worked in the past. You really kind of see the people that follow through and follow up are those individuals that you want to spend time with and work with, as well as those people that actually get things done. So I love that question, but Everybody has a little bit of a different answer. What's the Nick answer to that?
Well, I gave you some of it. It's curiosity, motivation, actual talent. What strikes me is, and the reason you see me smiling is because some of the stuff, actually all the stuff you said, Kathy, it's all old school.
It is.
None of it's science. None of it's PhD stuff. Follow through, do what you say you're going to do. You said asking questions. It's like being curious and inquisitive so you can understand what the person's drivers are, or what are their considerations. The number one thing for me is drive when it comes to secret sauce. I'm years in as a coach now, and I've been fortunate to get a lot of repetitions with a lot of different people. I don't have too many people that I see as a coach that are either not humble, because like, why would you talk to a coach if you're not humble and want input? And I don't talk to a lot of people that aren't motivated, because again, why would you talk to a coach if you're not motivated? But I have not seen any substitute for just the basic thing, which is drive. And then after that, I coalesce around, like you said, curiosity, question asking, really big on doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. I think timeliness is really important as an example. So that'll get us started right there.
Timeliness, collaboration, bringing people together. But, as equally important as the secret sauce is what not to do. So what would you say are things not to do?
Well, it's in that same vein. It's product dumping is an example of what not to do. I see it on LinkedIn, for example, all the time. Hey, you want to book 10 more appointments a week? We can really help you get your business started. We have proven strategies to sell. I'm like, did you want to ask me any questions? I'm not having any trouble selling. I'm having any trouble in this area. So product dumping is a big thing that I see, where you have product. It doesn't matter if it's a car. It doesn't matter if it's a building. It doesn't almost matter what it is. And you're just there to tell people what you can do for them, but you haven't asked any probative questions. I think that's a big mistake. Over-promising and under-delivering, I will notice right away. Big problem for me. I think big problem for a lot of people, but it's a go-to move, especially for people if they get buried. They'll come back and say, I promise I won't let you down. And they'll double down on their over-promising and under-delivering. That really erodes faith and trust in me. Being late is something that's a problem for me. And I think for an agency leader, a company leader, it bleeds. I promise you, if you're late, I'm going to see holes in your organization, because it's going to bleed into other things.
Could not agree more. I mean, it's the whole, if you're, not 5 minutes early, you're late. I mean, it's 10 minutes early, be 10 minutes early, 30 minutes early. I mean, there's no excuse for tardiness. None.
Well, and I'll just point out, I mean, I got on this interview. I showed up to the interview room 5 minutes after you and 5 minutes after the producer, and I was 5 minutes early. That's how professionals do it. I mean, I watch people, and I'm sure you do too, when everybody has a day. I'm not suggesting you're not going to have a day, or you're not going to be late, or you're not going to have to catch up on the call. But as a general rule, I want to work ahead of myself. I want my files out on my desk or in my briefcase for the next day's meetings. I want to have thought about them. I want notes for them. I'm not running into the meeting last second. It's really poor form, and it's a poor way to kind of handle your business as a general rule. So back your times up. The meeting doesn't start at 10. It starts at 9:50 as an example.
So don't you feel like that is part of the secret sauce planning? Like, understand what you're, where you're going, what you're doing, who your audience is. So if you plan in advance, that's part of it. Be very over prepared for what you're doing. And time management is part of that. It all goes into planning with the end in mind. That's a big part of the secret sauce.
Yeah, over prepared is a good one, actually. That solves for some things. It might sound a certain way or feel a certain way, but if you want to be sure you're on it, over prepare. I still do it to this day. I mean, I feel like I've made it and I've done it right. I over prepare. I'm not to be confused with I'm never running late, or I don't get something wrong, or there isn't a techno issue. But you should expect, if you're working with me, and I know from working with you and at times even for you, expect me to be prepared on time, have read my notes, working ahead of myself, and at times even over prepared. Talking about battlefield promotions, Kathy, you've been a battlefield promotion, meaning you've come from the field and been promoted to an executive position with business responsibilities different from what you were trained on and even what made you successful in the field. How did you experience that, and how do you manage others coming up from the field into the executive or business offices?
I don't know if I actually was ever prepared to do it. I think part of it just, I did it and asked a lot of questions from my tribe, meaning the people and the mentors in my life, about how to do it. When I left government to go to the private sector, it was the scariest thing I ever did in my life. And you were a big part of that. Like, you just kind of showed me the pathway to do that. And that wasn't easy. There was a lot of fear, and I don't think fear is a bad thing. And so, I think part of that being in the battlefield is people are scared. There's a lot of fear, and fear is not bad. I think you've got to be prepared to know what you're getting into. And sometimes, as we just talked about, preparation is key, but sometimes there's the unexpected. So that's what drives the fear. And you learn from that. You learn, what works, what doesn't work, what people's expectations are. So, I think that is a big piece to understanding or your pathway into the battlefield. And again, it goes back to the listening and understanding, what other people's needs are, what their concerns are, instead of being defensive and kind of putting up a reason to fight even further, just stopping and listening. So part of what I try to tell folks is, especially my team members, as we've kind of worked through some of these battles, is just listen to what the concerns are. And you may not be able to address it, but it will bring some clarity to what, their issues are. And maybe there will be a way to come and meet in the middle. And 9 times out of 10, there is. There are some times that you can't and you just have to walk away. And walking away is okay. But as you know, I don't like to lose. So yeah, I think that is part of it. I think in everyone's life, there are battles. So you have to figure out what the play is for you and the battle.
One of the things you said, I use different words in my coaching, but it's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Go to the meeting, put yourself in that situation, go to the fundraiser, for example, or go to the social event. I work with emerging leaders as an example who have never been. You and I have been to hundreds. I've probably been to thousands of work events, whether it's a conference, a training conference, a cocktail party, a fundraiser, and they don't really know what to do. So the first thing is get your butt in that room. You can shut your mouth if you need to, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You don't have to know the whole budget. You don't have to know every single thing that Kathy knows, but you have to show up and start blinking your eyes and breathing and asking questions. And if you need to be quiet for the first few minutes, our last guest, Janice Norman, who's the president of the California Broadband Association, talked about the value of being a fly on the wall. And there's times you're not going to know, and it's okay, but don't let it cripple you. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just do it.
Yep.
You mentioned mentors. I'd love to hear about mentors in your life and how you've thought about them and how you even recommend them for other people. And I'll just start to say, Kathy, mentors for me I don't know if I was born with an innate desire to learn from other people. I do read business books. People will ask me, like, give me your top 5 or 10 business books, and I fake it okay. Like, I like some business books. I love Emotional Intelligence 2.0 as an example.
That's a great book.
I learn better by anecdotes, and I learn better by being around people and being in the situation, and by podcasts, frankly, by narrative.
We've always had mentors, even as children, you have mentors, people that are teaching you different things. It starts at birth, your parents are teaching you things, and we're always learning. So, my kind of, I would say, mentor group are people from all different walks of life. And it's continued to grow as I've continued to grow. But I've never let anybody out of my mentor circle. I've always continued to bring other people in to teach me something different. And I'm sure that's, similar to you. There's so many different people that teach you so many different things. It's not just about business. It's about your family and your personal life and your friends. And maybe it's your exercise.
It's words too. Like, you'll use a phrase. I'll think, oh boy, I never thought about saying it that way. That's really, really helpful to say it that way.
That's right. And you bounce things off of people that might be in your industry, people that are outside of your industry, that they may have an opinion or not. So I think, having mentors is super important. It adds balance to your life. And a lot of situations come up. Like I said, personal, work, family. You've got just mentors in a lot of different areas. I know, Nick, you have mentors as well. Right? It's not something that you should ever let go of.
Absolutely. In this new second career, I'm having as a business coach, where I took just the parts I love from my business, and after 30 years, left the other parts for my talented partners. I love it. I see things pretty well. I know what I'm doing, but there's situations all the time where I'll give you an example. Is I'm coaching and I have a 70%er. So everybody I work with is busy. Not everybody's high level, but everybody's busy. And so they get on the call and they say, I didn't make the calls, or I didn't do the network. I did some of it, but not all of it. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I get these people to finish the job? Because it ties a hand behind my back, and I can't be successful if they're not doing some version of their coaching homework. And so I put that out to some mentors, and an example of a piece of advice that I got, and it was just me reaching out to somebody who might know something I don't know or has words that I've never been able to find, said, have you ever given a really successful person a grade of C plus on something?
Whoa.
Oh, have you? I mean, can you imagine me giving you a C plus? Hey, Kath, how are we doing in coaching? You're doing really well in the writing. I'm really pleased with the progress. How's it going with the board? It's going really well with the board. Hey, I'm follow through. Would you say you're like C plus? You would hate that.
Oh, I'd freak out.
Right. And I'm going to be an accountability partner. So that's an example for me of reaching out to mentors to say, I can't find the words for it. I'm sitting on something and I'm having a problem, and I, Nick Warner, can't solve it on my own. Who might be able to help me? And it wasn't one person. It was me calling 3 or 4 people and getting some input and piecing it together. So that's just one discrete example. But I use mentors for things big and small.
Do you have just like 1 or 2 people that you go to more than others, or does it depend on the situation or the issue that you're trying to solve?
It depends. That's a great question. As we work through and past mentors, is I think there's mentors for different situations. And I really appreciate you asking me that. There's mentors for the client. For example, I need to get to know these people so they can help me with the environment. They can paint the picture. It's going to help me with a discrete client. Then there's mentors to help you learn policy or learn your industry, for example. They're going to teach you like overall things, but it's specific to your industry. It may not be the sales thing. It may not be the piece of legislation you're working on. It may not be information about the building, but it's your industry. And so that's a second type of mentor that probably is with you longer. The third type of mentor is a life mentor who's helping you with like, how do you respond to your family? How do you grow? How do you deal with all these things, right? So I try to categorize them and call them for the right things. But I have mentors that are not life mentors. They're not going to be mentors forever. They're for a discrete thing. They're for a coaching thing. They're for a parent thing. They're for, whatever it might be, but they're not overall life mentors. So yeah, I try to be choosy about who I call. It's amazing how many times I hear something and I'll say, I never thought about it that way. I'm so glad I called you.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And I don't know about you, but I have added so many different people into my mentor circle over the years. And it's crazy because you meet people as you get older. It's more difficult to meet folks that you would kind of bring into your personal kind of circle. But in your professional circle, you're meeting people all the time. And I have found that even in the professional circle, some of those people have come into my, personal circle as well.
You talk about being behind the scenes. You're one of the best, if not the best behind the scenes person I've ever worked with. I haven't always been directly involved in your circles, but I've been close enough to be able to watch it. Talk about managing up. You've worked for big and powerful personalities. Some would have turned into a sycophant, meaning like, yes, boss, got a boss, on a boss, and be an operative. That's not really your style. How do you think about managing up and maximizing your input and your imprint?
Well, I appreciate the question. I think a lot of that comes down to trust and building trust with the people that you're around. Managing up is not like you going into a room with people you don't know and saying, I'm not going to own this. This has to come from the top. If it doesn't come from the secretary or the CEO or, the president, then it's not going to get done. No, that's not managing up. Managing up is building relationships, building trust and loyalty, understanding what the problems are that we're all trying to solve, right? Everybody in the room. And then talking through what the solutions will be as a whole and being able to put different scenarios out there, for the individuals that are truly making the decision. A lot of times it's one person has to make the decision, but there's a lot of people that are involved. So, what I would always try to do and still try to do to this day is understand what all the issues are and the problems are from all different aspects and talk it through. So I see it less about managing up and more about working as a team with the one person that may be the decision maker, understanding, right? So it's like, hey, let's think about it this way. And, there's been situations to where, when I was in government doesn't always have the best track record for working with the community or working with external stakeholders. So it's trying to get, your government official decision makers, whether it's the director, secretary, or deputy director, to see things like, hey, other people may be seeing it this way. And wouldn't the end result be better for everybody if we kind of looked at these things in their light, with their understanding and understanding what their issues are.
So one of the values you bring that's really interesting, the way you're discussing, is you go external to gather as much information as you can, to talk to as many people as you can. And part of what I think it sounds like you bring back to the executive, wherever, whether it's private sector, public sector, big business, big government, little government, you've worked on them all. So you bring more context to their discussion. One of the things I know, and I'll be curious on your comment about this, is when I've been the boss or when I've worked for the CEO, they know a lot, but they're also insulated and people talk to them different. Is that entered into your mind? And am I describing this accurately, that you're going to go get as much information raw and uncut and bring it back and try to influence from there by informing the conversation deeper?
Absolutely. I mean, information is key. And a lot of times the people at the top are not getting all the information, as you said, that the information is purposely kept from them. And that actually hinders decision-making, in my opinion.
And filtered and whitewashed also.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the ways I've worked in. I'm prompting you a little bit about this. Why does the governor's chief of staff keep calling for me? Why does the CEO call me? He doesn't seem to call anybody else. And the answer is you give it to him straight and nobody else is giving it to her straight.
Right. Give it to him straight.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go in and blow people away, but they're getting so much filtered, handheldy type information because of their powerful position that at times, and I think you and I share this a little bit, like I'm a straight shooter and you're a straight shooter, but straight shooters also get their heads chopped off by being obnoxious or pushing too hard or telling people the wrong things. There's an emotional intelligence, but you're gathering information that's unique and trying to fit that into the strategic conversation, it sounds like.
Well, and if people are asking you the question, they don't want, a polished, shiny answer. They want the truth. And you're not helping them if you're not giving them the truth. And, sometimes, being the messenger, you get your head chopped off. That's part of it. But they're going to keep coming to you and asking you the right questions because they trust that you're going to give them a straight answer. And they also trust equally that if you don't know, you'll say you don't know, and you won't just make it up. You'll go out and say, I don't know that, but let me figure it out. Let me do some asking. And because of the relationships that you can go out there and ask a lot of questions of whether it's your stakeholders or other people that are involved in the situation and then report back. And that goes to, follow through and follow up. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And the people around you trust that you're going to do it. That I think is super important. I mean, I know you have been in extremely high level positions and people will come to you with information and you may not like to hear it, but you trust it, right?
Yeah, for sure. We appreciate your time. If you like what you've heard so far, do me a favor and leave a 5-star review and share with your friends. We'll be right back. The law firm of Scholes, Brick & Rogaski is a go-to partner for me. I work the most with partner Michael Rogaski. I go to them for business contracts, strategic legal counsel to maneuver through our round complex business situations, HR and employee issues, startup needs, intellectual property protections, collection matters, and recently the purchase or sale of a business. I really like the fact they tell me if they're not the best fit and they give me a warm referral if I need it. Also, unlike so many attorneys, are totally level-headed and calm. I've experienced it like their slogan says, small firm service, large firm result. Contact Michael Rogaski at sbrlawsd.com. Kathy Olson at Ships and Trips is as creative and as willing a travel partner as you can find. These days, you can plan a lot of trips on your own, but for those trips that require more intricate planning, tons of time, or local contacts and savvy, Kathy's the best. My family and friends have worked with her countless times in every travel country, setting, and season you can think of. Contact Kathy with a C at shipsandtripstravel.com. Tell me about trust. You mentioned trust more times than I could write down. And actually, the question I wrote down when I was getting ready for this interview, and I geeked out because there's so much content when I get you in this interview. I understand your initial reaction is like, I'm a behind the scenes person. You've been interviewing CEOs and, global heads at Amazon and the mayor and that sort of thing. But you figured out how to be an operative behind the scenes, and kind of so have I. Tell me about trust and where it plays in. The question I wrote down, I was going to say, is ever lost it with people you need to have it with, or someone that needs it from you, they've lost it from you? Talk about the role of trust, good and bad. It starts with a sigh, as it should.
Gosh, that's a loaded question. Yeah. And, I'm going to put this back on you too, because I'm more trusting than I should be. And I think I've lost a little bit of that over time when I've trusted the wrong people. And to me, I've learned from that. Like, I don't want to be like that. Like, I don't want to be seen as someone that is not trustworthy. So they taught me something, whether it was good or bad, positive and negative for me, they taught me something. And I think I've kept that throughout not just my career, my professional life, but my personal life as well. I think it goes hand in hand. Trust and loyalty are two things that are very, very important to me. And I think that they're important as far as success overall. You need to know who you can trust. You need to know who is loyal. And I'm not saying that there are people that are doing their own things. They're not doing things to, better your career. They're doing things to better their own career, but you know that, and they're still going to be loyal to you and you trust them for that. And I mean, how would you categorize trust? I mean, you have been in this industry, and I know that you have had a lot of people around you that have come around for the right reasons, maybe the wrong reasons. And how do you distinguish and determine who is trustworthy and who's not?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you said. I'm a very trusting person. I'm a very open person. I'm transparent. I'm communicative. I'm expressive, and I feel hurt. So losing trust is really hurtful to me. I don't know that I've lost other people's trust a lot. If I have, it hasn't come to my attention. I'm more attuned to I've lost trust in them, lost faith in them. It's brutal. You don't notice trust when you have it. Most people are fairly trusting souls, especially people you work around. Some people, you have to earn it. With me, you have it until you lose it. Generally, if I trust you and you're a friend, I will trust who I trust, and I will share. I mean, I go to a line. There's a line, you would never go through for ethics reasons or legal reasons, but people talk to me. I talk to them, but I get hurt in this space too. It makes it really hard to maneuver, really hard. It sticks that I said something earlier about being stuck in the mud. It sticks you in the mud when you're in discussions with people that you don't trust. You're going to be guarded in what you say. Everything is gamey. Mostly you just don't say things. And I'm actually wringing my hands, as you can see sitting across me. It's difficult. It's foundational. You discussed it, like we talked about earlier. Don't overpromise. Don't make stuff up. Don't say it's okay when it's not okay. Listen really well. It's not rocket science. Some of it is you're born with emotional intelligence and the ability to sense these things or not. But I'm telling you, that trust thing, and is a little bit of a leading question because you raised it so many times. It's everything. Like if I get one thing to tease out, it's get it, don't lose it. And if you do, or we do, it's a huge problem. I mean, you ever had somebody work for you that you lost trust in? It's different to lose faith, or they're not coming in, or they're sick too often, or like there's drama. But losing trust is fatal for me in most situations.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's hard to someone may make a bad decision, and then you have to talk to them about it or confront them about it. And that's not trust. Trust is what is deliberate. If it's something that is a decision and it's a bad decision and it's a negative effect, and they own it and they talk it through with you and you can have an honest conversation about it, that actually builds trust, in my opinion, because people are going to make mistakes. Right? They're going to make mistakes. We all do. That's how we learn. But when the trust is broken, it's so hard to get that back.
And usually around me, it doesn't happen. And usually around you, it doesn't happen. I look for it. I listen for it. Even at a young age, I had decent intuition for it. I don't like cheesy. I don't like over fancy. I hate over promising. I really care about my brand. And so I've been pretty good at ferreting out and finding my way to people that I can trust really well. And it means a lot to me. Some people are more profit-based and go, or Gordon Gekko. Like for me, I take a real richness in the trust, and I operate from both myself and I expect others to operate from platforms of trust. Some of that goes with indispensable. With your indulgence, I'd like to get back to that. So you know how to become indispensable. Let's talk about that for a minute. I'm going to give you a quote to level set. Marcia Egan, a certified workplace productivity business leader coach and chief executive of the Egan Group, says, quote, and I really like this quote, in any workplace, you'll still find people who are absolutely indispensable. That is to say that productivity would grind to a halt if they were suddenly no longer there. And it's not just C-level executives who hold this distinction. It could be an employee at any level in any department of the organization. They've reaped the benefits of being indispensable at work. You're more likely to get a raise or promotion, and you may be sought out for special projects, opinions, etc. How in the world I get working to that space? How do you stay in that space that gets you the leverage to get the raise, to get the people under you, to control your travel more, to get the projects you want? Like, how do you get indispensable, Kathy Prizmich Kernan?
It's all the things we've already talked about, right? It's showing up. It's taking the jobs nobody else wants and doing something with it, right? I tell my kids all the time, I've told them a million times anyway, that in your work, there are going to be situations and jobs that come up. And people are asked like, hey, can you stay late? Can you come in early? Can you work on the weekends? Can you do all these things? Can you do the stuff that nobody else wants to do? Raise your hand, step up, do it. Do the best job that you possibly can do and don't expect anything from it. Just do it. And that goes a long way. So when you step up and take the jobs that nobody else wants and are stepping in and going the extra mile, people notice that. They know that you're doing it because you care, or because maybe you just have extra time, or they know there's a reason that you're doing it. They're not sure exactly what it is, but you got to take that job. And when you do, you better follow through with it and do the best job you can. And you get recognized for that, right? So that there's recognition there. And then that starts to build the trust. People start to look at you like, oh yeah, she showed up last time. She did this. She took the opportunity to work on the weekend when we needed volunteers at this event, or she offered to write this policy analysis, or whatever the case may be. I think that is part of it. You're only indispensable for a certain amount of time, and you need to know when that time ends and when it's time to move on to the next position or look for something else, right? So when you start getting to a point of, I've had this, I've been doing this forever, I'm tired, nobody appreciates this anymore. It's not about everybody else, it's about you. So it's time to make a change and move on to something else that maybe you can be indispensable in and show your value in.
What have you done when you sense you're indispensable? None of us are completely indispensable, and I think we know that. We're not speaking about this literally, but pretty close, where they really don't want you to leave. What have you done with that kind of leverage? I've had it before, and I've used it for pay for sure. I've used it for terms. I've used it for, I need you to be on time, or I can't work with you, or I need you to listen to me and stop interrupting me. You don't have to do what I want, but our team's got to be able to do our job and give advice, and you're interrupting us and you're pushing back in the wrong places. So I've used it for governance and money and hiring really good people and keeping them. But what are some of the ways you've used it when you've had that kind of leverage by being indispensable, or feeling indispensable at least?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what you said, it's a lot of governance and time, being able to say, listen, I need more support, or I need more members on my team, or I need a change. Like I'll stay in the organization, but I need a new role, or I need different responsibilities. It's time for me to pass the baton. We all need to know when it's time to pass the baton to someone else. And a good leader is always looking for that other person to hand the baton over to. Spend more time with my family. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. When I was with government and even in the private sector, it was always a balance between trying to figure out how I could take on those jobs that nobody else wanted and make myself indispensable, and also balance the time I had with my family and my friends, because that to me is the most important thing. And you work to live, right? But you got to have passion, and you got to have drive and determination, but you work to live. So to be able to leverage some of those things, to work hard, make yourself someone who they need and want and will continue to go to, it gives you that leverage to be able to go and do the things that you are most passionate about. For me, that's my family and friends.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I really love hearing you say it that way. There's a lesson for anybody. If you're listening to one thing in the show, listen to that. It's really good. Well, how to use leverage. It might be different for different people. People want different things, but using your leverage to get it how you need it, essentially. You mentioned travel and family. Let's talk about that since we're on it right now. Talk to me a little bit about it. And I will also talk to you about the role of stress and the role of family and the role of travel. How did it impact you? What'd you do about it? What sucked? What was awesome? Different stage of your career also, Kathy.
Yeah. So, when I was in government, I worked for, Department of General Services, and then moved over to the California State University Northridge, which is not in my hometown, hometown is Sacramento. Northridge is in Los Angeles. So that's when it kind of started for me. My kids were very young. I was a single parent, and having to manage going down south to Los Angeles, working for the university, was something that was new for me. I'm like, how am I going to do this? But I was able to have that leverage and working with the university that they needed me. So we were able to negotiate, okay, I'll travel when I don't have my children because I was a single parent. And so I was able to leverage that. And same when I was with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, it was the same type of thing. I worked in prisons throughout the state and I had children. And that to me was like, hey, I've got to balance being here for my children's sports and making sure that I'm at the games. And I don't have to be at every single one, but I would aim for at least 80% of those games I would be at. So again, talking to individuals about this is what my priority is, and I want to make sure I'm the best employee for you, but I need to meet the needs of my family and friends and to be able to leverage that. It was super hard when I first started it, and traveling, and that was just working in California, traveling to prisons throughout the state. I cried. I was so sad and lonely and thought, listen, you can get through this because the end result is you're going to continue to grow your career, which will help your children in the long run. So I had to keep the end goal in mind and keep that balance in perspective. So it's always been a struggle for me to balance that because I felt like I didn't want to let either one down. I didn't want to let my professional side down and my work life down by not going on a trip. And I didn't want to let my children down by not showing up for a sporting event or being home to do homework, right? So it's a struggle. It's very much a balance. And I know you've experienced the same thing. Travel is great. People think it's so fun. Oh gosh, you get to travel for work. Woo! Oh, so fun. Well, I'm going to prison towns most of the time, or, I'm going to state capitals and, it's not always luxurious. You're in the hotel room or you're in an office building, you're not seeing the sights, and it's taking away a lot. And that is taxing. It can be really, really hard, really hard. So you have to give yourself grace.
That was one of the hardest things in my career at the end of my first career, as a lobbyist, government consultant, was the travel, because I had a national portfolio, and it just, it took me away from my kids and my gym and my good eating habits and my staff. And, but it was a necessary at that time evil. At times earlier in my career, it really fueled my growth because I was able to increase my footprint, learn about different people. It's almost a forced socialization when you have 4 days at a conference or a training event, or a client event. So, even me, and I think you're the same, I'm hyper social. I'm very much an extrovert. I love people, but I'm not going to lie to you or the people that listen to it, especially younger people coming up. I had lots of homesick. I'm not sure I had tears, but I had lots of teeth grinding. But my wife was super helpful because she's like, hey, you got to go. Like, daddy's got to work. We got you. But and she would help me with the kids too, because she would help condition the environment, because I felt a lot of guilt at times. And I'm a dad, not the mom. It's certainly not a single mom. There's a big difference in our stories. I have a nuclear family with a wife who's really talented at work and a wife who's amazing with the kids, and we're on the same page, and I'm an involved dad, but she helped me by putting words to like what I was doing and why I was gone, and then use those words with me too. So it's a little bit of a team sport, and her like reminding me, and you mentioned it's for the betterment of your family, but it gets lonely out there, man. Like, no joke. It sounds luxurious. Like, oh, you're going to New York or you're going to San Diego for 4 days. Like, yeah, inside of a conference room, because I may never see the outside, and every meeting I'm in is thick, and I'm leading almost every meeting. So there's no free agent. Even the fun is work tinged. Not to say it was all bad. I think it's a necessary thing. And, I work with emerging leaders who haven't had to, I mentioned battlefield promotions. So when you're in sales, when you're working for Kathy or Nick and you're in the Capitol and the sales meetings or like in the field or the battlefield, as I say, it's, you mostly aren't traveling that much. You might be traveling around your territory, but as you move up and your territory, just to use one word, grows, you're probably going to travel. And so like I had to adjust my game. I had to adjust the words I used, and I had to endure some pain. And I realized that there's a lot of gain. I make great money. I have a big impact. I love the people I work with, and this sucks. And some of it's going to suck. And I got to find ways to let it suck, but also not let it kill me and bury me. So I vacillated back and forth. There were times I really hated it. There was times I loved it, but it's got to happen. And one of the things that has to happen is, I mentioned emerging leaders, Kathy, is you got to use your voice at home. You have to socialize this, preferably before I'm leaving Monday on a 6 a.m. flight and I won't be back Thursday. And oh, by the way, hon or kids, it's every week or twice. You got to socialize some of these things so they understand you're not just screwing around. It's not a one-time thing, because it's a glass ceiling. It's a hard glass ceiling. If you're not going to see your clients, and I do see this, I don't see this a lot in my practice, but I run into brick walls at times with my emerging leaders over like, I've never traveled and it's not going to work for me. Totally got it. I just want you to know that's probably as far as you're going to go. If you're working for me, you have to see the client. It's very similar to public speaking in a way, Kathy, for me anyways. You don't have to be a public speaker. You don't have to be able to lead a meeting, but it's going to be a cap on where you can go in your career. So I had to find mental ways to deal with it. I had to find ways to eat and exercise better. I had to learn hard lessons. My MO through most of my career, especially leaving the kids, and my kids, and some of the listeners know my kids are, away in college, so we're empty nesters now. But, most of the time I was traveling, I'm leaving them, I'm missing games, all these things. So I had to make sure I had a plan. I had to make sure that I executed that plan, or like, what am I doing? What am I doing here to just like screw around? I'm at the fundraiser. I'm at the training conference. And I'm talking to people that I have really nothing in common with because they happen to stop me. And I'm 25 or 30 minutes in conversation going, Nick, this is dumb. You've got to develop skills around getting out of some of these conversations. If I'm going, I'm going to get every last drop of it. And so my mindset was, if I'm going, I'm going to be the first guy at breakfast, the last guy out of the bar. And it killed my body. It way too much stress, way too much drinking. It wasn't drunk drinking. It was just late in the day.
No, social drinking.
And then, hey, Nick, go lead this meeting in the morning. So travel was really difficult for me, and it burned me out at the end, to be honest with you. At the end of that part of my career, it was a lot. Some people love it. I have clients that their version of balance is 50% travel, 50% home. And that's really impactful for me. I write that down. Like, that's a great swing thought for me. That's candy to my brain. That's not right, but it's a really fair way to think about it at high levels. I don't like it, but I think that's a decent way to think about balance at high executive levels, fortunately or otherwise.
It's true. And I think you and I both know, like, you're right. You have to get out there. You have to do that in your career. If you're going to grow your career, it doesn't matter if it's private sector or, public sector. You've got to get out there and make those relationships work for you. And 90% of the time, the people that you're out, at the conference with or the training with, they've got families too. They're dealing with the same kind of thing. So it's not like you're the lone ranger that is the only person dealing with it. Everyone is dealing with the same type of thing. And so kind of bonding with people over those types of issues and talking to them and getting to know people about, their family, their friends, that's how you build relationships. And, you got to do it. It's hard, but you got to do it. And I know for me, and I'm not sure if you do this with the kids, is when they got older, especially, I would take them with me. And, they obviously couldn't go to all the events. And I would have to say, listen, you can do this. You can be here with me, but this is time that I have to be working. So they could see and understand where I was and what I was doing. And I think that, was a learning lesson from them as well. And it doesn't happen all the time, but there are situations, maybe, especially in the summer months, where you can bring your kids along so they're learning as well how to maneuver that. There's some teaching lessons there as well, but we're all in this together as far as, folks that are, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but most of the people have family and back at home when they're traveling. So, you're 100% right. You got to make the most of it. So it's really early mornings, really late nights, and it takes a toll on you after a while.
It does. Tell me about stress and role of family before. I want to get some of your impressions on business coaching. I want to give you a couple stats about my industry. It's really growing and it's interesting. And I'd love to get your sense of like how you've experienced coaching in organizations you work for, how you think about it. But before we do that, Kathy, tell me more directly about stress and even the role of family in either mitigating or extenuating your stress.
Stress is something that is not a terrible thing. It's not a bad thing to have stress. Stress is a driver for me. And I'm sure it's not like this for everybody, but I work well under pressure and it drives me. And like I have said before, earlier in our conversation, that I'm usually planning things with the end in mind. So I have the end result. What's my end result? What's the goal? And then working backwards from there. And that can be stressful because you're looking and you're planning for all the things that you have to get done before you meet that goal. That's really stressful, but it's not a terrible thing because you've got an end result. And I think the best thing ever is when you can actually achieve that goal or that end result and you have finality there. Like I can cross something off my list. So to have a list of things and all the things that you have to do to achieve this goal and to be able to cross those things off the list, that's super satisfying, but it is really stressful. So how do you manage that? Everyone's a little different. I do it through exercise. I exercise a lot. And sometimes as I've gotten older, it's not as strenuous as it used to be. But even going out and doing a 30-minute walk in the middle of the day helps you to kind of relieve that stress a little bit. Healthy eating, super important. It's hard to do it when you're on the road, but it's gotten a little easier, I would say, over the years. There's a lot more out there as far as options for healthy eating. So, diet and exercise, I put those at the two top things for managing stress. And then building in personal time for your family, again, goes into planning. You've got to plan it. You've got to take the time to spend with your family and friends. You might have to schedule it 3 months out, but you got to do it. And the end result is, hey, I know I can get through the next 6 weeks of really stressful time at work because at the end of that time, I'm going to spend a long weekend with my family or my friends, and I'm going to do this because I'm always planning with the end in mind.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. And I mentioned earlier that where I want to differentiate, where I think we do differentiate on this podcast, but also in my coaching process in the practical. And that's really good. You're not solving it, you're recognizing it, but here's some mitigation tools. And I think that's really practical input for our listeners. I really appreciate that. We appreciate your time. We'll be right back. Three Bridges Consulting did the video on the recently rebranded nickwarnerconsulting.com. I really love the video because it helps me sell by speaking directly to my prospective clients. Dennis and Sean at Three Bridges Consulting are high-level storytellers for the purpose of helping my prospective coaching clients understand what differentiates me from the pack. A recent new coaching client literally said to me, "You don't need to sell me, Nick. Your video sold me. I understand what you do and how you work with me as a client." That is a true story. You know I love that. Contact 3BC at threebridgesconsulting.co. Ken and his team at Connect Strategies head up my post-rebrand digital marketing campaign. I'm moving up the rankings for business coaches and consultants quickly. Connect is 20 years in the business, and I feel like they're really focused on my account. I refer business coaching clients to Connect too, and I get really good reports on result, professionalism, and drive. Thank you, Connect. Contact Ken at KNECHTstrategies.com. In the time we have left, Kathy, I want to get some of your thoughts about business coaching. Let me again just set the stage quickly. Smart organizations invest in their people through coaching as an effective tool to improve performance. According to louisazoo.com, which is a leading researcher in the industry, every month there are over 1.5 million internet searches made by those looking for business, career, and executive coaching in the U.S. Also, according to Deloitte, employees who perceive that they are learning in their jobs are 3 times more likely to stay with their current employers. I'm a full-time business coach, as you know, so I'm curious about your seasoned views of my industry and how you've seen advanced professional development used well or otherwise.
Yeah. First of all, I think every head of an organization should have a business coach. It's not because they want it. It's because they need it. They need someone outside to kind of bounce things off. It kind of goes back to the mentoring and, being able to provide perspectives about things that is outside the industry, I think is super important in helping individuals make decisions. When I was in government, I think one of the things that government struggles with the most is training at all levels. And in the private sector is much better about training, but there's still a need for more leadership training. Leadership is not something that comes natural to everyone. And some people just are never going to get it, but they can be taught the lessons for how leaders kind of move forward. And the industries that I've been in, the most important thing are learning from other people and from business coaching, you're providing individuals different scenarios, different takeaways that they can use in their aspect of decision making.
Yeah, but that's how I experience it too. And most of the people I work with are really successful. I have emerging leaders who are on their way, and I start working with you, and then you assign me your emerging leaders. And normally it's candy, it's a reward. I work with people's best people. I do very little remedial work. The smart employers invest in their best people and like really supercharge that work. But I work with a handful of people who are at the level I've worked at and a couple who are above, a handful that are above the level I've worked at. And I'm so impressed by them. And I look so forward to the sessions, even if at times I'm pacing around, outside my office before I get on the Zoom session, because they're looking for fresh perspective. They're not dumb. They're not failing. They're succeeding, but they want fresh eyes, oftentimes outside of their industry, which is something I'm finding I love it, which is less important than I'm providing value. But I do, because so many of the principles, and you talk about them, like, it's rudimentary of being on time, doing what you say you're going to do, surrounding yourself with people, especially not sycophants who bring something different than you bring. Power of the agenda. Let's use the agenda. Let's rebalance power, if you will, between the board of directors and the executive. Let's make sure we're investing in our best people. What kind of words are we using when we're leading under stress? How are we handling that situation? Show me your plan again. And I almost always can pick out things that make somebody go like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Because we all get so close. An example for me is when I write, and I do a lot of business writing now, which I love so much. I get to put my eyes to things, and then people oftentimes want to write up. It doesn't matter how many times I read it, I can't see it at the end. I miss typos. I miss like my storytelling's off. So I have an editor that helps me, and every single time she puts her eyes to it, I get it back, and it's usually intact, but I think, oh boy, that's a good catch. Oh boy, that's a good catch. I mean, that's not necessarily coaching, but it's me recognizing like I'm good at this, but I need fresh eyes in my situation. I've had coaches. I am a coach to many. I think I have 42 individuals I work with right now, and 6 or 7 companies also, but I have coaches, I have mentors. I want fresh perspective, and that's a big part of it. It's not because you're a mess. And frankly, I try to watch my words around coaching. I can lose people that way. They think, I don't need coaching. I know what I'm doing. Like, heck yeah, you know what you're doing. So I try to be sensitive to that and use words like advanced executive coaching or advanced professional development. It's hard for one of your employees, for example, Kathy, to say, that's doing really well, to say, hey, we want to send you for some coaching. That can get shoulder slumping. So I've learned over time to use proper words to condition the environment so people understand this is a reward. And mostly what I'm finding is people are saying to me, I cannot believe my company is paying for this for me.
Right.
They really appreciate it. And I didn't see that coming, but I've reported back to employers who normally tell me, I know every time you talk to her, she comes in my office and tells me how great it is. I think she might be staying because of this. And that Deloitte study that I quoted points that out. Employees that feel that they're invested in and that they're growing and learning, they stay. And that's what we're doing. We're growing and learning. And it's not because you're at deficit. It's not because you don't know what you're doing. Because the company thinks you have the goods and they want to get some, fresh perspective and supercharge some of this. That's true at the executive level and the emerging level as well. And it's mostly fun, to be honest. People report, I really look forward to these sessions, and frankly, so do I.
Do you have people that are asking like executive leadership for coaching and training? I mean, do people actually seek it out, or is it the executives that are saying, well, I really want to invest in this person?
It's both. And I've learned the market more in 3 years. Originally, when I left governmental affairs, and again, I had been coaching for a while as part of governmental affairs, both in my growing my business and growing my employees and partners, but also formally in some of our client groups that say, hey, would you come in and do some coaching or do some team building, do some strategic planning? So I've learned the market better. At first, I thought I was going to be working with just executives. And that was true at first, but the executives started to say to me, hey, I've got some really good people. Or they'd say, I have this Kathy Prizmich Kernan. She's really good. She's never done this part before. She's dominating in this area. And I've learned to say, like, any chance I could work with her? And so that is a way I'm finding my way to really talented emerging leaders. And then once I get in the ecosystem and people understand kind of what it is, that it's not do this, do that, that it's really individualized, and we talk and it's confidential. We talk at a high level about your career, how you can add value to the company. It's expanded my ability to offer the services to more people. But it's both. It's individuals that call me that they pay good money to invest in themselves. They're spending money to make money or spending money to get them into a better position. I take it really seriously. A lot of times it's their family's money, and it's money that they could be using for their kids or for saving for college. And so I really take that seriously. And a lot of times it is the executive who starts with him or her and says, my goal is to bring you in and have you talk with our leadership team. They usually make me available. And I think this is probably smart for all coaches. Assigning somebody to work with a coach is not going to work. It's not for me. I want you to want to be with me. I want us to be there working on things together that we're clear on, but not because your boss said you need to. So even if you get assigned to me, I'm generally going to do a free consultation to make sure we're a good fit. And then you can tell your boss you want to work with me. I'm definitely good at connecting to people, but it's lots of different things. What it's not for me is I have, and forgive, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I have a no assholes rule. I've already done that part of my career. I'm not doing that anymore. I have a motivated professional rule. You have to be a motivated professional. I used to think it was just the executive, but it's not. It's motivated professional at any level, aspiring leader, and you have to want to be with me. We have to want to be together and be a good fit. And from there, it can be magic. You can be vulnerable with me. I can be vulnerable with you. I've made a lot of mistakes, and they mostly weren't fatal. I was able to stay, on track for 30 years. I've had a lot of successes, so I'm able to help people by sharing that, but also I learn a ton. And every single day I log on to my Zoom, Kathy, or get to talk to somebody like you. I have notes all over my desk of the smart things people say that make me a better business coach on the next call. So I'm in a huge learning phase and I'm imparting a lot. As evidenced by my measure of success as a coach is retention. So I just do session to session, and I'm told other coaches require, and some of the programs, there's great leadership programs out there. In no way do I mean to disparage those, but they might be minimum 6 weeks or minimum 9 or 12 weeks. And a lot of the coaches require a commitment. I don't. I'm easy in, easy out. We can talk about a discrete issue. We can talk about things that are ongoing. Most of my clients I've kept individually session to session over like 2.5 years, some even 3 years, but I have to add value. And I ask them, am I adding value? Sure, you want to spend this money? Take some time and go apply these things we talk about and then come back to me. But I'm really intent on adding value, or there's no reason for you to be with me. And I won't even have you with me if I can't add value to you.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So it's all levels and all things. What it's not is lazy. Back to the original conversation. What it's not is know-it-all-y.
Hard work.
It's hard work. You got to want to be there. And frankly, for me, it's making me a better human. I'm drinking differently and less. I am trying things that I know I can do, but I'm not perfect at them, for lack of a better way to say it. I did a team building and strategic plan for an industry that I know nothing about. And I did 3 days at our Hyatt downtown, mic'd up in front of 80 or so people. And what I was told is, we know the topic area. We need your intelligence around getting us organized, around team building, around that sort of thing. So I'm not just preaching it. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You have to be competent at it and go do it. Get some repetitions, get some input afterward. The input I got was I did really well, better on day 3 than on day 1. But I felt those things I want my client to feel nervous. I was nervous before this podcast. I'm not going to not do it. I'm going to do great at it. But yeah, I'm nervous. This is newish stuff and this is live. And so is that team build. But I'm gonna continue to push myself and feel those feelings and not let perfect get in the way of really good or good enough at this time. Learn it as you go.
Fear is not the enemy. Nick, you 100% need to be open to change. People need to be open to change. And if you're not open to change, then you're not going to change. I mean, that's part of it. It's like, you can provide someone all the training in the world, and if they're not open to it, it falls on deaf ears. They have to be open to it.
Yeah, and they won't be on my client list. I don't mean to be tough guy about it. We talk about leverage. So I have a lot of leverage in the market right now. I've been really successful at it. I'm having no trouble getting and keeping clients, but I want to work with people that want to be here and are in the correct posture, that don't know it all. They're looking to change and grow. For another example for me is temperament. So all the things that get you here, like, you are tough as they come, Kathy. I've been with you. I've been against you. I've had all kinds of conversations. You're really tough. And I'm pretty sure I'm really tough. I'm super tough, at times too tough.
Yes, you are.
But my voice at 35 and 40 was scrappy and up and coming. My voice at 53 is I'm the boss of everything, and I'm 6'4". I got a deep voice, a command presence. I've won a lot, and I need to pay attention to that and not bring that intensity to the wrong space. And so I'm really trying to recognize that. The word you use is self-aware. And I'm also reaching back out to people to go, how did you experience me in that intensity? How did I do? I'm not leading with my chin, but I'm calling people I trust to say, I'm working on something here. I'm trying to slow the game down. I have a note on my computer right now that says no bow ups, no blow ups, because I have a conversation this afternoon where the person's getting my goat. I'm not going to have it. And I'm a strategist, so I'm not going to do it. But I have to put a note on my computer. That's some of my advanced profession. Correct. It's some of my advanced professional development is I'm not just asking my clients to get better at things. Like I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try some stuff and I'm going to report it back to you and let you know how it goes. And we can do it together.
That's great.
As we're down the home stretch, let me just replay a handful of the things that we've learned from you. And I cannot thank you enough for opportunity to learn from you as indispensable, as somebody I hold at the very highest levels of business and frankly, personal also. Self-awareness. I really like that. Some people don't have it, so it's tough. But if you don't have self-awareness, which you do, and I think I do, use people around you to help you with your self-awareness. Ask probative questions and say, how did I do? How did you experience me? And don't ask one person because that's one person's opinion. It's one data set. Ask other people and force yourself to be self-aware because you're asking for the input.
That's right. It's sometimes not easy input to take. So you've got to do it with understanding that being defensive is not going to be helpful. If you're going to ask the question, ask for it. You need to take it in and listen.
Over preparing, I thought was really interesting. And there's a line of demarcation somewhere. It's like, hey kid, hey calf, like that's way too much. An example for me is preparing for podcasts. If I over prepare, it bogs me down. But for some people's standards, probably you see notes all over my desk. Do you not? Like you've seen how many notes I have. You have seen them.
I have seen them. That's for sure.
There's notes all over my desk because I prepared. And some people might say it's over preparing. For me, that's my safety net. I was up at 6 a.m. on Saturday writing draft notes. I did a bunch of research. I got a bunch of research from my researcher. I prepared my notes. I walked away from them. Some people might think I'm over preparing. I need to for this, for my comfort level. In some meetings I do. Other meetings, I know what I'm doing. I'm totally comfortable. I've seen it 100 times, but I over prepare. Better listening. It's hard to do, but that's one of those things where I might urge our listeners, like put a sticky note on your computer. I have a client that has one on his computer at work and one on his computer at the office that says stop talking, ! Because he's the boss and he talks over all his people. So if you're missing stuff and you think you need to be a better listener, like maybe write yourself a note. But I really like as rudimentary it is, better listening and then trust. We could talk about it all day and we did. Just don't lose it. It's so cliche, and I know it's cliche, and you hear me say this, it's cliche for a freaking reason for hundreds of years. It's hard to earn and easy to lose, and once you lose it, you are screwed. Be straight up. Don't hide the ball. Don't overpromise. Just be straight up.
If you make a mistake, own it, apologize, and recognize. And don't make that same mistake twice because we do make mistakes. It's okay to apologize when you've made a mistake. It's okay to recognize that, again, builds trust.
What's not okay is lack of fidelity to the previous conversation we had. So I'm good with apologizing. I'm good with like really valuing the trust. But if we're having the same, now this is employer Nick and maybe a little bit of coach Nick, if we're having the same discussion, also parent Nick.
Yes.
If we're having the same discussion about the same thing, that's a problem. But if we're having the same hard discussion about different things and you're evolving and not making the same mistakes, we're good. You can keep trust, grow trust. I love all that. I like asking in. Part of being indispensable is stepping up and asking in. There's fancy things that you and I can do because we were born with gifts and we had great mentors and we've been really fortunate in our lives to, get certain jobs. And there's certain skills that people don't possess. And are like, I can't do it your way, Nick. I don't know how to talk that way. Well, guess what? I don't know how to do spreadsheets the way you do. Ask in, be a fly on the wall, outwork other people around you. Like make up for your deficit by asking better questions and outworking people around you. That's old school as it comes, but that was a big root of your success. While you were learning the savvy you have now, and while I was developing the savvy I have now, I was outworking everybody around me. I'll do it. I'll take it. I can't help you if you don't want to work past 8 to 5. I'm not a great coach for you. And if you're not willing to travel, I'm not a great coach for you. But also I've made mistakes by working too hard. I've hurt my body big time, my family big time. I've done too much. So there's a line in there. But if you're not going to ask in, good luck to you.
Could not agree more. You've got to take the jobs that pretty much nobody else wants.
I love what you said. And I'm going to wrap it up here around organizational heads needing coaching. And it's not, I try to watch, it's not because you don't know what you're doing. Rarely is that the case. Every once in a while, I'll get an executive saying, I'm really struggling here. I need your help. But it's not usually the case. It's usually somebody getting a hold of me or I hear something in the conversation, go, want some fresh eyes in your conversation. I'm grizzled, battle scarred, all of the things that you describe. I've seen a lot of stuff. I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot of stuff. Do you want my fresh eyes on it? And do you want to kick some things around? I've only seen benefit to that. I've had coaches at the highest peaks of my career. I've had business coaches. I've had 3 in my time and a lot of informal. But these executives who, because you're there, you have it all figured out. I'm not usually telling you what to do. I'm not usually saying you're doing it wrong. I'm giving you different words or here's how I hear it. Say that to me again. Or that's what if we did this? And my results are I'm keeping clients, but I love the humble executive, and they're almost always the most successful executive, almost always.
Could not agree more.
Kathy Prizmich Kernan, you have done such a great job on this podcast. I wish we had 2 hours. I almost want to make 3 because I've really enjoyed this, and there's even some things we didn't get to. Thank you so much.
Nick Warner, thank you. I am always in the learning mode when we are together. So thank you again for asking me and inviting me to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And lastly, thank you to Daniel Link, our producer, Riley Byrne from Podigy Podcast, our fantastic researcher, Alex Warner, and thank you to you, our listeners. We will see you next month on Together at the Top. Thank you so much for your time. Together at the Top thrives off listeners like you. To stay connected, follow our socials in the show notes and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We will be releasing our show on the last Tuesday of every month. See you next time. At Nick Warner Consulting, we exist to coach and consult motivated professionals. I meet with you on Zoom in focused 90-minute sessions, working toward your goals and developing next-level business skill sets. My job is to add value to your organization and your career. To learn more, visit www.nickwarnerconsulting.com or call me directly at 916-765-3576.